get a chance tonight to talk some Final Four hoops with the coaches. I got Coach P back. I got Coach Pags back tonight. I'm excited to talk. I want to get the guys' thoughts on Cooper Flagg, Mr. Broome from Auburn. There's been a lot of debate going back and forth. Who's the player of the year? This Final Four is going to be a really good matchup. We'll get the guys' thoughts on that. This is the first time in a long time I've went chalk throughout my picks. And in a couple of my brackets, I'm like third out of like 50 to 100 people. And normally I'm kind of in the middle of the pack because I do go with a lot of upsets in the first couple rounds. So I want to get into some bracket talk and much more. So make sure to stay tuned. The Rock Pile is coming right back at you. All right, welcome to the Rock Pile here tonight. The Rock Pile tonight brings the Final Four show. Hard to believe that Saturday is the national semifinals, and then Monday night will be the national championship game. Hard to believe college basketball is coming to an end. You got the Lady Final Four that starts Friday night, and then their final game will be on Sunday night, and the boys will be on Monday night. So without further ado, let's bring on the coaches here. We'll get Coach Pags. Coach P, what's going on, gentlemen? How are we tonight?
Doing great. What's
going on, boys?
Well, I was telling you guys before we got started, I walked in the house. My wife was at soccer with my daughter. My son was at baseball tryouts. And I walked in the door and I said, I got to go downstairs. And she said, for what? I said, I got to go talk hoops with the guys. She goes, all right, well, nice talking to you too. So that's kind of how my night went. But we got a really, really good Final Four, and we'll get to that in just a little bit. And I was saying before we came on, this is the first year, like, I don't know. We talked about it, I think, last week, that there's not a lot of upsets. There was only, one buzzer beater. The kid from Maryland had the buzzer beater in the Sweet 16 game. We really haven't seen any of those this year. You got chalk in the Final Four, which the more I've been thinking of these matchups coming in tonight to talk with you guys, I think they're two really good games and four really good teams that I think any of these four teams could win it. But what's your guys' thoughts? Pags, I'll start with you first. What's your thoughts been like this tournament and, the Final Four teams that we got that we'll dive into here in a second? But what's your early thoughts?
Well, I agree. I think the four teams you have here, I think any four of these teams can win the national championship. I think you honestly have the four best teams in the country playing college basketball at the end of the year, which is what you want, right? I mean, I know people have complained, and myself included, that March Madness this year didn't have that same excitement that we've had in the past with those buzzer beaters. But the four number ones getting to the Final Four. I mean, isn't this what we want at the end of the day? I mean, we talk about it a lot in college football, how we want the best teams playing at the end of the year. I think that's exactly what you have. I mean, you got the four number ones, and I mean, nobody's really saying there should have been a different number one. All four of these teams are legitimate number ones, with no one's complaining that these are not number one teams that should be out there, and they've really have proved themselves throughout the tournament. I mean, all four of these teams have really rolled throughout the tournament. I mean, Florida, a little bit of a scare in the last game, but they showed resilience, and they showed how they can fight back. It was like a 10-point lead with about 5 or 6 minutes left, and they just came right back. So I think it shapes up for a really good weekend, really fun weekend of basketball. I think we're going to see really good basketball this weekend.
What do you think, Coach?
I mean, these four teams, if you're big in the analytics, I mean, they've been the top four teams in the KenPom since February in some order or another. So, I mean, it's no real surprise. I think what's kind of happened, and we talked a little bit last week when you had 16 teams all from power conferences, and I think it's kind of manifests itself even more in the finals, is that, the rich are going to continue to get richer. I think in this era with NIL and the transfer portal and everything, I think that it's going to be harder and harder for that team to come out of the pack, because the advantage that they used to have, the mid-major or the team that goes on the late run and gets deep into the tournament, Elite Eight, Final Four, as a surprise, they typically have the veteran team that had been together 3-4 years with really good guard play. And sometimes that would be enough to overcome maybe the more individually talented team with less experience, the guys that were going to be the one and done, 1 and 2 year guys and then going to the NBA. So I think now what happens is those really good players at the low major and mid major level, they're not staying 4 years. They're, guy that's a, player of the year, all conference rookie of the year at one of the mid major leagues. They're in the portal and they're getting paid at one of the high major schools. So I think what we're seeing this year is probably kind of going to be the trend in the foreseeable future.
I want to talk a little bit about the Elite Eight games first. And, I want to start with the Florida-Texas game because Coach Cal, Arkansas had the big lead against Texas Tech. They blew that game late. And then Texas Tech has Florida on the ropes. I think Texas Tech was up 9 with 2-3 minutes to go in a game. And then Walter Clayton Jr. hit a couple big threes. They got Florida back in it. And once they got ahead, they closed it out late. And I feel like in football, we say toughness, hard-nosed defense wins championships, and good guard play in the NCAA tournament. This Final Four, and even through these Elite Eight games, Coach P, the guards and the toughness of these teams, to me, is what's really stood out.
Yeah, I think the toughness, but, there's got to be some shot making too a little bit. But I think the common denominator of all 4 of these teams is I think they can all, like Arkansas, or rather Auburn, I think has really improved defensively. So I think all 4 of these teams really guard. And, Florida, we talked about last week when they got by UConn, it was like that was the game, where if you're a top team, there's one test. And, they got another one the last go-around, and they've passed them versus, it's been Duke has kind of had their way up until a little bit. They got challenged in the last round. So it'd be interesting. That's a really fascinating matchup if we get to that point, Florida and Duke.
Coach, I want to ask you this one, and then Pags, I'll ask you a different question. But, they're making a lot of this, and you guys are the hoop guys, so you can break this down better than I can. But, I was really watching Duke because Duke really shut Alabama down, and Alabama lives and dies by the 3, right? If they're really hot, I think the game before they hit, 25 threes in the Sweet 16 game to get to the Elite Eight. But one thing that Duke does that I've heard all week and through this tournament is they switch on all ball screens. And now don't get me wrong, they're really talented. They got 3 or 4 guys that could go in the first round of the NBA draft. But Coach, talk to us a little bit about how does that benefit a team like Duke or any team that can switch and play different spots?
Well, it benefits Duke because they switch all ball screens and they're really long on top of that. So a team like Duke, they've got guys that are interchangeable enough. So and because they're so long, switching on ball screens, I mean, you don't punish them because they're running out the 6-foot point guard, and you're creating a mismatch where you're throwing it in on your big on him, or vice versa, where you're getting your quick guy matched up on their 5-man that can't move. But because they're long and because they're interchangeable, it's really, really tough. The way the game is now, it's become so much about creating, like college basketball has become a little bit like the NBA, where they run offense to create the matchup versus offense to score off the action. And so when you can switch every screen as well as Duke does, you kind of take that away from the offense. So they were phenomenal in the last round. I mean, the way they got out and contested. I mean, if they play at that level, it's going to be really difficult for anybody to beat them.
I feel like when we talk about when we get into the 2 Final Four games, is I feel like you have Houston that last year, if they could shoot the ball better than they did last year, I think Houston had a really good chance to win the national championship. But I feel like this year you got Houston, it's that experienced team, toughness, hardcore defense. They're going to get after you. They're going to defend you. I feel like Duke's the more athletic team. They got the superstars. They got who I think is the player of the year in Cooper Flagg. But then you look at Florida, and people may say Florida might be the deepest team. And then you got Auburn, who is playing really well right now. And the Broome kid goes down, but then he comes back in the game. When he's in the game, man, he is dominant on the floor.
It was incredible.
But, I mean, I feel like these 4 teams, they're all different in style, Pags.
I agree. I think that when you mentioned that Duke and Houston matchup, everyone talks about how good Houston's defense is, and they are. They're phenomenal. But they're going against Duke, who is just as good. I mean, Coach was just saying it. I mean, so now you have a matchup of 2 good defensive teams matching up against each other. So now the next question is, all right, now whose offense is going to shine? I mean, Duke is. I think Duke is the most talented team left in the tournament. I mean, we talked about how big they are, how long they are, but their shooting is phenomenal, and that's where I think is gonna. That's where I think this game comes down to. What it comes down to, I think Duke is just has more guys. Where Houston's gonna play great defense, but do they have enough to stop that Duke offense? I don't think so. I mean, you go through that Duke lineup, five freshmen, obviously with Cooper Flagg leading the pace, but then you have Con Knipple, who's like phenomenal. He's the best scorer out there. And then you just keep going down the list. Tyrese Proctor,
Proctor.
just as good. And then you got the big man, Malash, or however you ever say his name. I mean, if you stop one guy, they got four more guys to go at you. So I think it's going to be tough. And I know Coach mentioned the Ken Palm rating. Duke is one of the highest in the Ken Palm rating. I think they're second. I was reading today, second to the 1999 Duke team. So they've been up there all year. I mean, so that's going to be a great matchup. And then same thing with Florida and Auburn. I think Florida is another situation where they're just more. I think they're just more talented. They have more players out there than Auburn. But Auburn is just so tough. I mean, you saw that game with a kid that gets hurt. His shoulder gets hurt. He goes out. He comes back in and takes knocks down a 3-point shot. It's like that's toughness. I mean, that's when it comes down to it. When you're hurt and you come out and do that. I mean, he just turned it up to another level. I haven't heard too much about his injury and where he's at. They haven't released too much information on it. They're keeping it probably close to the vest, but that's going to be a big key. Like, how healthy is that kid? I know he went out and did everything he could, and he's going to get. He'll be out there. But how hurt is he? That's gonna make a big difference.
Coach, I feel like this Florida Auburn game all week so far. When you turn on the radio, I hear everybody talking about it. I feel like nobody's giving Auburn a shot against Florida. I keep hearing, well, Florida's got, Florida plays 8 or 9 guys. They wear you out. Florida went into Auburn during the regular season, was up big on them, and then they held on to beat Auburn by 9 or 10, I think it was. But I feel like nobody's giving Auburn a shot. When Auburn plays well and they can defend, and the Broome kid is as dominant as he's been, are we overlooking Auburn in this game?
Maybe a little bit. I think Florida was kind of the trendy pick coming into the tournament. I think a lot of people were kind of riding the Florida train coming into the tournament. If you didn't like Duke, you like Florida, though. They were like the people that people were latched onto. It's going to be no surprises. I mean, those two teams are familiar with each other. I think Broome's got to be close to the top of his game. It could be the difference maker, but I mean, Clayton's been really good for Florida too. So, you would think that if it comes down to close game, it'd be one of those two guys, with the ball at the end of the game, and it's whoever can make the play. But, I think Auburn's got a puncher's chance in this game. Most people like Florida, but it wouldn't shock me to see Auburn win this game at all.
And I think what's impressed me.
With Florida, I was going to say with Florida, they're a great offensive rebounding team. Probably the best rebounding team left in the tournament. But they also sometimes they get into the turnover game, so they got to reduce turnover. If Auburn can force some turnovers, and get on the boards with them, I think it'll be a close game. Last time they played, it was I think 90-81. So it was a close game in that game. But Florida putting up 90 points on them, so they definitely got a chance.
I think Florida's deeper, but I think with Auburn, if they can stay healthy, I think we talked about it last week. I think Auburn lost like their last 3 out of 4 games. They really struggled defensively. They started the year. I mean, they were hot right out of the gate. I think they were 18, 19-0 or 19-2, something crazy. And then they lost 3 out of their last 4. They didn't really defend well. I think defensively they're playing really good. And again, I keep saying it, the Broome kid's on the floor because they'll match up with Florida's size inside. Yep. But when you look at the tournament, all these tournaments over the years, it comes down to the stars. And I don't think there's anybody that's been as good as Walter Clayton, coach, throughout this tournament.
No.
Yeah, I mean, he has been. He's been their money guy. We talked about, how they've been pushed a little bit, a couple different times in this tournament, and he's the guy where, when the ball's going to be in his hands at the end of the game, if the game's in doubt.
And then, of course, one of the storylines is you got the mentor and Bruce Pearl and the mentee and Todd Golden, and Todd Golden, of course, I'm a West Coast Conference guy, was at San Francisco for a little while. I think he played at St. Mary's too, which I think was a really good story. But when you look at these two coaches, it's like you want to see, I'd love to see Bruce Pearl get one and play for a national championship. But, you know, you see these younger guys come in like a Todd Golden and the job he's done at Florida. I think it'll be a great game. And I think the best of the two games, I think this is going to be a really good game too. And I think you can probably flip a coin. We'll pick it at the end. That Houston Duke game, to me, I think the winner of that game wins this whole thing. I think Houston's got the firepower defensively. I mean, what they did to Tennessee. Well, I love Rick Barnes too, but they got out of the gate fast, coach, and the way they defend. I mean, Tennessee was operating their offense outside the 3-point line. They couldn't get to the rim.
The first half of that game, I mean, Tennessee was completely taken out of their element in the first half. I do think the one, and Pags touched on a little bit earlier, the one thing that differentiates this Houston team, like in the past, I mean, Houston's been really good defensively for a number of years. Just physical, tough. They rebound like crazy. That's the other thing. They've been dominant on the glass. But I think the thing that differentiates this team is this team can shoot the ball too.
Yeah.
So in the past, Houston has always run into that rut game or that rut half where they just can't make shots, and that's been their undoing. And I think this team is much less susceptible to that. The problem they have is they run into Duke. But I think this probably is the best opportunity that Houston's had in recent years to go all the way through, just because they shoot the ball to go with that defense and rebounding.
Yeah, and I feel like this year's Duke team is, from start to finish, I think they've been the most athletic. They got 3 or 4 guys that are probably going to go in the first round if they come out, and I think they probably will. But I feel like they haven't seen. I think, Coach, the ACC to me this year was down, right? The SEC was the conference, this year. So I think the ACC was extremely down. But I don't think Duke has seen the physicality that Houston's going to bring on Saturday night.
Yeah, I don't think many people see that. They really like how the game's officiated is going to matter too a little bit, because a team that plays like Houston, you can call a foul every time down the floor, or you cannot call much of anything, and it becomes really a physical game. And I think if Houston turns the game, the more physical the game becomes, I think Duke can deal with that. But I think that that favors, like a looser whistle, I think will favor Houston a little bit. And the other thing that favors Houston a little bit is this game is a little bit of the throwback we talked about. Houston's a very experienced team, probably the most experienced of the 4 teams, whereas Duke might be the least experienced of the 4 teams, but the most talented. So, it's kind of at a different level. It's what we talked about earlier, where, tournaments and days going by where you'd have the team with a little bit more experience against a team with a little bit more talent, sometimes experience enough to get you over the hump when you got really good players that Houston does.
So, Coach, how do you defend, if you're Calvin Sampson, I mean, how do you defend a kid like Cooper Flagg, who can beat you inside, he can beat you outside, he can beat you off the dribble? What do they have to do to contain him and let somebody else beat you?
Yeah, I would expect them to be super physical with him, not let him get to his spots comfortably. Again, how it's officiated is going to matter a little bit. I don't know if they may run 2 guys at him to make him give the ball up, but that's a dangerous thing against a team as talented as Duke. And he's a willing passer and a good playmaker for other guys. But I think the biggest thing they'll do is really contest him physically for every inch on the floor. I think they'll be really as physical as the law allows in that game.
Pags, when you look at this Duke team, we mentioned obviously Cooper Flagg's the headline, and you got Canepo. You got a lot of guys on this team, as I'm talking about. And Coach, I think you hit it right on the spot. It depends on how they officiate this thing, but I think one thing that this Duke team has proved to me is they didn't need Flagg in the ACC tournament. Again, the ACC was down, but you still got to get through and win games. You got to find ways to dig deep. So, I mean, Pags, this Duke team to me proved that even if Flagg's not on his A game, and let's be real, against Alabama, he wasn't, but I think he still scored 16. He didn't get his 25-30, but do they need the A Cooper Flagg, or can they get by with a B Cooper Flagg?
Well, I think they got enough guys. If any team can do it without their star player, it's Duke because they got enough guys around them. But I do think it's certainly going to help to have him, have the A star Cooper Flagg. I think what Coach was saying, he hit it right on the head. I think the key for Houston is to make Cooper Flagg uncomfortable. Because Cooper Flagg, I mean, if they take him out of the game, he's the type of player that he's going to find other ways to get his teammates involved. He's not one of those players that if you shut him down, he might not score all the points, but he'll find other ways to get his teammates involved. So I don't think you can take him out of the game completely. But I do think if you take him out of the game and he's the the B Cooper Flag, then Houston's going to have a heck of a chance to win this game. But if Cooper Flag is on his A game, I think it's going to be a struggle for Houston. But I do think that Duke can still get by with his B game.
So this was the first time since 2008, and I had to look to see what teams were in, and it was Kansas, UCLA, Memphis, North Carolina. I think that was the year Coach Kansas beat Memphis when John Calipari was there, when all 4 1 seeds were in the Final Four. We've been talking a little bit about it over the last 2 weeks. America loves the Cinderella. There's no 12 seed that's still in it. There's no 10 seed. And I was trying to go back because we've talked a lot about college football over the years, that I think this tournament, the 18 playoff, we're debating on teams 9 and 10 who didn't get into the 18 playoff. But I think at the end of the day, when you look at this Final Four, I think the 4 best teams are left. I think these have been the teams,
Great.
Coach, I think you hit it on the spot earlier, from start to finish have been the best all year. So here's the question I want to ask you guys. Did the committee get this thing right, or was it just luck how this thing played out?
Well, I think there's always a little bit of luck involved. I mean, right? I mean, you can see. I think they seeded them right. I think they gave the 1 seeds to the top 4 teams in the country. But that's what the committee tries to do every year. I mean, once in a while there's a miss. But when you see they seeded the top 4 teams in the country. They got it right with the seeding, I think. But then it's got to play out. I mean, because it's such a long tournament, anything can happen. Anything can happen, and it's a long trek. I mean, it's a long trek to get to the Final Four, to get to the championship game. So all you need is a team to get hot at the right time, or a team to get cold at the right time. So I do think they got it right, but I also think there's a little bit of luck involved sometimes with the draws and just what teams get hot in your bracket. But I do think they got the seeding right this year.
Coach, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think this, especially the top seeds, I think it was pretty easy, honestly, for the committee. It's clearly the 4 best teams. I think, and one of the reasons people have been complaining a little bit about the tournament is, like, what makes the NCAA tournament kind of special is, like, it's designed to trip up the best teams, I guess the way I would put it. It's a one and done format, and especially like each weekend, you only got a 1-day turnaround to prepare for your second game of the weekend. So it in a sense, and what creates March Madness magic, I guess, is the potential to trip up the best team. I think if you're looking for, versus like the NBA playoffs where it's a 7-game series and it really identifies the best team and crowns them champion at the end of the day. I think the difference this year is the separation, from the top of the bracket to the bottom of the bracket. That's why we saw power conference teams, and that's why, I think I read something where the 4 teams in the finals this year, there's only been 6 other teams total in the history of KenPom with as high of efficiency ratings as these 4 teams this year. So the separation between those teams and the rest of the pack is a lot more than it typically would be.
Yeah, and I think, again, we've said this, is I think the days of like the Valparaiso kids that are staying for 4 years, and, by the time those kids are juniors and seniors, they can make a run in the NCAA tournament. And really, when you look at this whole tournament, it's been chalk, round 1, round 2, all the way through to the Final Four. I know we talked a little bit about this last week, but do we think this is the norm now going forward with the NIL, the transfer portal, and how coaches now can come in and flip a roster? And it's like the mid-majors now are just a stepping stone to the Power 4 job. Do you think going forward, the NCAA tournament coaches, this is what we're going to see now? A lot of chalk?
It really feels that way. It really, the one thing that'll be interesting is this settlement with the House case that's coming up this spring, where the schools will have $20.5 million that they can pay directly to athletes, basically. That could be a really good thing for a conference like the Big East, because the Power Four, most of that money is going to football. What doesn't go to football is going to basketball, and what doesn't go to football or basketball, there'll be some crumbs left for the other sports. So I think that a conference like the Big East, or a school like Gonzaga or St. Mary's, like a traditional basketball power that doesn't have money invested in big time football, if they choose to pour most of that money into basketball, that could help equalize the field. But that said, like, you're still not going to get the NIL money at some of those schools, at the Villanovas or the St. John's, that you get at Alabama or Michigan. So the NIL is still going to be a factor. But I do think as the money increases, we're going to see more and more of what we saw this year.
Yeah, I agree. I think you're going to start seeing the separation of the big boys versus the not so big boys. But I also think the one thing that is maybe a positive of this whole thing is you're going to see teams who can get better real quick, right? You're going to see a lot of teams who maybe this year are not very good. They go all in and they get a bunch of money, NIL money. Like I said, it's not a football school. They pour all that money into the program, and they can be good the next year. So I don't think there could be situations where 1 year you're down and out, and the next year you got 5 new guys coming in as starters. I mean, we saw it this week with some. If you've been watching the comings and goings. I mean, some teams. There was one team that we were talking about that they lost everybody. They lost all their players.
Yeah.
Some guys graduated, and then the other guys just transferred out. I mean, even Syracuse locally. Look, I mean, they're down to 2 guys now. And they're basically starting over. I mean, they got a good freshman class coming in next year, but or this year, whatever you call it. But again, it's a chance for can they hit the transfer portal hard and bring in some guys to put something around them, and they can be good next year, as soon as next year, if they get the right guys.
Coach, you make a good point. You were mentioning, I want to take Buzz Williams for an example here, who just left Texas A&M now to go to Maryland. And Buzz has a history of staying at a school for 3-4 years and then bouncing. But the people were talking today on sports radio with Texas A&M, the money all going basically to the football program.
Mm-hmm.
And these basketball guys don't like that. They want to go somewhere that they can invest in the basketball program. And I was saying last week, like a school like Texas A&M in basketball, I think if you were to ask the fans, the athletic department, and say, were people happy with the year A&M had? And they were competitive. They made a little bit of run, right? I think they won a couple games. I think they got to the second weekend. That I think that's okay for those schools. But do you think that's one of the reasons why you're seeing some of these coaches, and I'm just using him as an example, Coach, that he leaves there and goes to Maryland because of the football school and the money that goes into the football program?
I'm sure that plays into it. I mean, Willard left Maryland because he wasn't happy with Maryland's commitment to basketball and what they were willing to invest. So, I think Maryland has been more of a basketball school. Like the football has not really competed at a national level. So, Buzz, maybe feels like he's got more of an equal playing field with at Maryland in terms of where they prioritize basketball versus football. But like I said, Willard just left. So, and on the way out the door, he was complaining about their support of basketball, for a month before he left. So, and the money in the coaching contracts, that drives a lot of it too. So, but I think, coaches are really going to look at that going forward, how schools are going to spend their money especially when this $20.5 million that the schools have direct control over comes into play.
Well, you're hearing grumblings already with Nate Oates at Alabama. I mean, obviously Alabama's a football school, right? But you've been hearing some grumblings about whether or not he's happy there. I don't know if it's just because he's trying to get a bigger contract out of Alabama, or obviously we know Alabama, all the money is football, right? But he went there and he built a great program in Alabama. So you think that he would want to be there long term to make that. It's never going to be a basketball school, but he's got a heck of a basketball team there. But you're starting to hear some grumblings about whether he wants to stay there or head elsewhere. So
So let me ask you guys this question. There's been some debate too this week on who the player of the year is, and right now it's Cooper Flagg and the Broome kid from Auburn. Jeff Goodman was getting kind of hammered on radio because he was saying co-players of the year with both of them, and some of the guys were saying Cooper Flagg by far has been the best player all year. And I was kind of going back to the Heisman Trophy thing, and I thought Travis Hunter should have won it because I said he was the best player in the country. He might not have been the best receiver. You can argue whatever you want to, how you want to debate it, but I say if you take somebody off the team, how would they be? If you take the Genty kid off of Boise State, I'm not sure how good Boise State would have been. You take, Hunter off of Colorado, I'm not sure, but it's like you take Flagg off of Duke, they still got through to the ACC. I still would say Cooper Flagg is the best player in the country. From a talent standpoint, would you guys agree, Coach? Do you think he gets the award at the end of the year?
I mean, I think he should. I think he's the best player, and he's going to be the number one pick in the NBA draft. To me, as good as Broome has been and some other guys have been, I think Flagg is clear cut number one player in the country.
Pags, you think he gets it?
I agree. I think he's the best player in the country, but no doubt, and I think he gets it hands down. I think the Broome kid is a close second, but I don't think he's done enough like Flagg has done. I mean, yes, Duke's got other guys there, but it's been all about Cooper Flagg all year. So it would shock me if he didn't get it.
You guys been watching any of the girls games? You guys got a favorite than for the women's game, Coach? Who you like?
Haven't watched a ton of the girls tournament at all. Can't bet against UConn though. Oriana in that situation, and it's been close to chalk in that tournament too, which is no surprise on the women's side. The women tend to be closer to chalk because the gap between the best and the worst teams is 100 times what it is in men's basketball. But I go UConn there. So
Scott Van Pelt last night, I think it was last night, because the girls played last night. After the Connecticut game, they were interviewing Gino Auriemma on ESPN, and Van Pelt said, Coach, you're going to go, for the underdog UConn team. Mm-hmm. And Auriemma was like, the what? He goes, I don't think I've been called an underdog in 20-something years. And again, of course, Paige Becker, I love Paige. I'm hoping that she wins this thing. But the girls' games have all been great games. I mean, it's been chalk. I mean, you got South Carolina on one side against Texas, who's been good all year. You got Gino, the only 2 seed to get through, which, I see 2 seed. You're like, they're really not a 2 seed. They're really a 1 seed. They kind of caught a break with Juju Watkins going down for USC because people wanted to see Paige against Juju. I'm with you, Coach. I love Gino. I love Paige. I'm hoping Connecticut can get it done. Here's a crazy stat. Is they said if Paige Beckers doesn't win the national championship, she'll be one of the only all-time greats at Connecticut to go to 4 Final Fours and never win a national championship, which I think is crazy.
That is crazy.
Who you like, Pags?
I like UConn too. I mean, I was sad to see Juju get hurt. Because I was watching that game a little bit. I watched that game a little bit. I watched a little bit of the UConn game, and then I was watching TCU with Haley. I like Haley Van Lith. I think she's a great player, and I was watching her a little bit. But I that's besides those teams. I don't really know much about the other ones, but I can't go against Gino Auriemma too. He's just so dominant. But I think other schools have finally caught up to him. I mean, for years it was UConn and nobody else. I think you've seen the other teams catch up to them. But I think it's going to be hard to beat them in this tournament. I think with these last 4 teams remaining.
Coach, real fast, I want to go back to Tom Izzo's another one of my favorite coaches to to watch coach, and you always see the emotions on his sleeves in the press conferences with the kids, and I was pulling for him to beat Auburn, and I know him and Bruce Pearl are good friends, but some people think that maybe Izzo's got 1 or 2 years left. What's your thoughts on Coach Izzo?
I don't know. Just as an observer, I kind of see him as being more out of the kind of from the world of, I don't know, Krzyzewski, Williams, Boeheim, Larinaga, Bennett, those kind of guys. I see him as being more that mold of a coach, which would tell me he probably doesn't have a whole lot longer to go, because I don't know what his thoughts are on the current landscape. I think that's what's driven most of those guys out of coaching is like the change in the game with the portal and the NIL and the year to year and everything. Versus I think guys like Patino and Calipari maybe are wired to navigate that space a little more. So, Izzo comes across as like, being kind of young at heart and still having good energy, but it wouldn't shock me to see him go the way, like he reminds me a little bit of Saban in the football world. And, Saban, like it felt like he had a lot of gas still in the tank, but he just wasn't, didn't like where college sports was headed as a landscape and whatnot. And it wouldn't surprise me to see Izzo go down that path.
Yeah, I've seen some stuff on Izzo lately, and basically what I've been hearing is that obviously we know that he's old school. He does it his way, and he's not willing. What I've been hearing is that he's not really willing to go down this landscape of the new basketball with NIL and everything. He's kind of doing it the same way he's always done it, from what I've been hearing. And I think if he keeps doing that, I don't know how long he's going to be able to last to keep doing that. I think he's going to want to keep doing it that way. I don't see him really changing into this new way. I think he's kind of stuck in his old ways, and he's going to stick to that. But eventually, I think it's going to run out where he's not going to be able to compete. I mean, as long as he's still doing well and he's in Elite Eights, I think they'll keep him as long as he wants to stay. But I don't see him, if he doesn't change, I don't see him ever breaking into a Final Four or winning a national title again if he continues to not get into the whole NIL and really dive in like everybody else has.
Yeah, and something was different this year when, through the NCAA tournament, when you see the emotions with Izzo on the floor with his guy. I mean, he's always like that anyways, but
yep.
I thought there was something different this year. And even in some of his press conferences when they were asking him about the portal and, when it opens and, just some of his responses, I wouldn't be surprised if he goes one more year and kind of goes off. I think he really wanted a shot to get to one more Final Four. I think he sees that window. Coach, I think it was a good reference to say Nick Saban, because I would probably say the same thing. But I just wanted to see what your guys' thoughts were on Izzo. So, all right, well, let's pick these two games. Let's see who you guys like. And I'm going to tell you, I'm going to stick with my picks for the national championship, but I'm really torn with the second game here. But we'll start with the first game, the 6:09 tip. Right now, Florida is -2.5 to Auburn. Pags, I'll start with you on this one. Who do you like?
I like Florida in this game. I think they have too much. I would love, to me, Auburn is like, we talk about there's no Cinderella. To me, Auburn is the Cinderella. I mean, there's no Cinderella left in this tournament, but to me, Auburn is that Cinderella because they kind of play like their coach. I mean, he's fiery. The team is fiery, and if anyone can pull it off, I think they can do it. But I think it's going to be a close game. But I think in towards the end, Florida's going to pull away. So I like Florida in this game.
Coach, who do you like?
Yeah, I like Florida too. I think, Auburn, I think, has the puncher's chance, especially if Broome does his best Danny Manning and puts the team on his back. But I think Florida's depth in the end, I have to lean towards them. Wouldn't shock me if Auburn won, but I think Florida, Florida, all odds are that they come through that game.
Well, I had Florida from day one in the national championship school. I'm going to stick with Florida, but Coach, I'm with you. I wouldn't be surprised. I just think too many people are counting Auburn out of this game and not giving them a chance to win this game. And I think that's what Bruce Pearl likes. I think Pearl likes being the underdog in this game. And Florida's been on the ropes, but again, a kid like Walter Clayton Jr., who's been fantastic down the stretch. I think this Florida team's been tested. I think they're the deeper team. We'll see how healthy Broome is. If he can stay healthy, stay on the floor. But I'm with you guys. I'm going to take Florida, and the gambling guy that I am, I'm going to take Florida laying the 2.5 in that game. This is the game I'm really torn on because I have Duke and Florida playing for the national championship in my bracket, but I am really torn on this game because I think Houston's got a really good shot to beat Duke. Coach, I'll start with you. Who you like?
I got Duke here. When in doubt, go with the best player. I'd be shocked if I wouldn't be shocked. Like I think Duke's the better team, and we talked about Houston shooting it well. I mean, I think they have to shoot it well, but I think Duke makes you not shoot it well. Um, so and at the end of the day, like I said, if you're in doubt, go with the best player.
Paige, you want Duke?
Yeah, I agree. I don't think this game is going to be as close as some people are saying. It's weird, like Coach said. It would shock me, but it wouldn't shock me. I think Houston can definitely pull it off. But it would shock me, but then it also wouldn't shock me. But I think Duke is just too powerful. They got too much. So I don't think it's going to be as close as a lot of people are saying with this game. I think Duke wins easily.
So I'm not a Duke guy, but when these brackets came out, I didn't even look at the brackets. Coach, I'm with you because I said Duke has the best player in the country. So I literally put Duke winning it all from day one without even seeing these brackets. I just think that even Houston, as tough as they are, I think Houston could shut somebody down. Maybe they hold Flagg to 15 points or so, but I think Duke's got too many weapons that they'll throw at Houston. And I really think that Duke switching all the ball screens and the athleticism that they possess. I don't think Houston has seen a team like Duke all year, but I also don't think Duke has seen a team as physical as we talked about earlier that they're going to see pegs. I don't think Duke runs away with this game. I think this is like a 1-2 possession game with a minute to go, and what coach is going to do their make the adjustments late in this game. I think if Houston keeps this thing close, this might be Kelvin Sampson's best team that he's had since taking over at Houston. And Coach, you hit it on the spot earlier. This is the best shooting team he's had to go along with the best defensive team that he's had. So I think it's going to be closer. I'm going to stay with my pick. I like Duke to march on and play Monday night. So we all got Duke and Florida, guys. So I might as well ask you guys, who's cutting the nets down? Pags, I'll start with you this time.
That's tough. I have Florida in all my brackets winning it. I had Florida and Duke. But now I'm starting. If I can change my bracket, I would. I would pick Duke over Florida. But what a battle that's going to be. I have no idea who to pick in that, really. I think both teams are so well matched. They're both so big, and they're both loaded with talent. So when they match up, I think it'll be a phenomenal game. Maybe come down to last possession. But my heart says Duke, but again, I think it could be a toss up. I don't know.
I just had to look at my Yahoo fantasy bracket to see what I predicted the score. So I'll give you mine in a second. Coach, you got to be riding Cooper Flagg and the Blue Devils, right? You riding with them again?
Yep. Go with the best player.
Yep, I agree. I got him too. I had an 86-82 Duke in the final game, and I don't know. Again, I'm not a huge Duke guy, but I got to give some credit to Jon Scheyer because filling in for Coach K, filling in for any of these legends hasn't really worked out well, really, in any sport. But man, Coach, you got to tip your hat to Jon Scheyer and the job that he's been doing, continuing to recruit at a high level.
Yeah, he has really, like you said, he's bucked the trend a little bit because usually, you want to be the guy who follows the the legend. Yep. Usually the guy that comes right after the legend, it's tough sledding because people are expecting so much of you. The other thing with Scheyer, he's the only guy of the four that doesn't have baggage.
That's true.
It's really, I find it really fascinating how Sampson and Pearl have kind of rehabilitated their careers and their images after some of the trouble they got into with the NCAA years ago. And then, Golden had a little bit of off-court issue recently too.
Yep.
But Scheyer has been, he's proven to be like, the ideal successor to K, at least so far.
Yeah, that's a good point. I feel like all those coaches, Coach, you mentioned, have all had second and third chances, and here they are. Some in the Final Four and some on to Chris Beard, another one who, and then what's his name? The coach I'm drawing a blank here that's going to Texas to left Xavier. You guys got to give me a name. I'm drawing a blank here.
Miller.
Yes, Sean Miller. Yep. Yeah. He was another guy that got himself in a little bit of trouble, and here he comes out again, smelling like a rose, a big payday going to Texas. So these guys seem to find ways to get away with things, right, Coach?
People forgot quickly. Right. Once you start winning again, people forget the past.
Well, it's like as long as your talent or your production exceeds your indiscretions, you always got a job, right? Whether you're a coach or an athlete.
Yeah.
Very true. Very true. Well, listen, guys, I appreciate it. I appreciate you guys talking some hoops. We're all riding with Duke. We'll see how it pans out. But I think the Duke-Houston game, I think to me, the winner of that game, I think wins it all. But we'll see what happens. But Coach, listen, I appreciate you taking the time always, and I love talking to you on Sports Watch, and we'll do it again soon.
Sounds great. Always great to talk to you guys.
Awesome. Thanks, Coach. Pags, I'll have to see what's going on the weekend for Sports Watch, but good to have you on, buddy.
Yeah, always. Appreciate it.
All right, guys, have a good week. Enjoy
You
the
too.
weekend. So that was great. I want to thank Coach Pags and Coach Paziak for coming on to talk some Final Four with me here tonight on the Rock Pile. Some big news coming up. Stay tuned. Over the next week or so, I'll introduce the guest for the Beyond the Game podcast, which is going to be fantastic. It's something different that I haven't done. So stay tuned for that. Have a great weekend watching some college basketball. Again, should be 2 really good games on Saturday night. So on behalf of the Rock Pile here tonight, enjoy the weekend, everybody. We'll see you again soon.
This has been the Rock Pile Podcast. This is where you come for authentic conversations with athletes, coaches, teams, business leaders, and so much more. It's our passion to dive deep into the highs, the lows, and the obstacles that shape incredible stories of resilience and triumph. Right. We hope you've enjoyed the show. If you did, make sure to like, rate, and review. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and Apple Podcast. See you next time on The Rock Pile.